This week on the Redeemed Marriage Podcast, we're going to be wrapping up our little mini-series that wasn't really intended to be a mini-series, but we just got a little long-winded last week. So we're talking about how to create a new marriage. And a big part of that is us looking back on who we were as individuals and as a married couple just over 12 years ago, before we walked through infidelity, and then now who we are today and how we have created a new marriage in 5 different areas. So today we're going to be talking about areas number 3, 4, and 5. So stay tuned. Hello, folks. Welcome back. This is the Redeemed Marriage Podcast. And I'm Rusty Bryant.
I think we need to stop
and
right there.
She is not Rusty Bryant. Wait, what?
I think you need to stop right there and let's take a dramatic pause and start again with a little more energy. You sound like we spent this weekend at a marriage retreat.
Wait. Time out. I don't know if you really meant. Are you serious? You want me to stop it and
No, I don't want you to stop it and rewind it. I just want you to go, "Hello, folks," with some more energy.
Hello, folks.
So much better.
Did the first one not sound very energetic?
It sounded like we've been gone all week and weekend.
And we have. Hey, that doesn't mean that I'm not just boiling over
That's
with
right.
enthusiasm.
That's right. You just sounded a little tired.
Well, I might be, but that doesn't. Hey, that does not affect all of the wisdom
That you're fixing to embark.
Embark? How about impart?
Embark
Oh, Lord.
on these people.
And y'all can't blame that on her being tired. She's like that all the time. Okay. No, we have
I'm
had.
super excited about
Yeah,
this.
we actually have had a great week. And we went and got to visit our future retreat home in Montana, and it was awesome. And then
it's going to be amazing.
came straight home and went to a retreat. And it was really cool because if some of you follow us on social media, it was actually at one of the houses in Laurel, Mississippi, where they film Hometown with Ben and Aaron Napier, and they do a lot of the renovations and home makeovers and things like that. And we stayed at one of the homes that they redid in season 6. So that was pretty cool because we had seen the episode and we were like, this house looks familiar.
Yep. And she always paints like the new version of the house on a watercolor and gifts it to them when they present the new house. And it was hanging right there in the foyer.
Yeah,
It was really
neat.
cool.
It was neat. But we had a great time with some really fun couples that we got to spend the weekend with. And so here's the other thing. There's been quite a few of you that have been like, oh, when are you coming to do a retreat in our neck of the woods?
Yep.
And the answer is,
When we're invited.
that's a great answer. That was nicer because I was going to say we're not. No, but that's not true. We would love to, as a matter of fact. And we're just kind of getting into doing more retreats. And we really just, I mean, honestly, it's a time factor right now. But our time, we are going to have more time really next year. And so we're kind of looking a little more to the future and how we can.
Next year is in 25?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you
Where
meant
are
like
you?
next
What
school
life
year.
are you living?
I thought you meant like next school year.
No, I meant the
like
calendar.
after the summer.
I meant the calendar. And there may be some room next fall, but we just have a lot of things up in the air. And we already have a couple of retreats coming up this spring over in Atlanta, Georgia. And those are full. But like Heather said, in all seriousness, it's one of those things where we would love to come to your area. So if you have a church that might be interested in bringing us in for a marriage conference or retreat, have them reach out and talk to us. We would love to do that.
So I think the reason why it's a bit confusing is because we said we went to one in Laurel, but that was completely church driven. Like a church invited us to do a retreat for their elders.
That's
and
right.
so we didn't create that retreat.
Right.
So the ones that we are doing are the 2 in Atlanta. And then in the fall, we hope to do one in Montana. Those are the ones that we are, designing and creating,
and hosting.
Yeah. But then other people are like, hey, our church wants you to come and do this event for us. And that's where you come in as far as you, the listener, come in and we would, love to entertain those for sure.
But one of the things that we talked about before we went on this particular retreat is because we stayed at this house. So it was an Airbnb, 3 couples, which is our retreats over in Atlanta are going to be the 2 retreats are 3 couples each time. And yes, we can do church retreats, conferences for more people. But we even talked about, we were like, hey, if we enjoy this, it could be one of those things where we go to a certain area, we get an Airbnb.
That's right.
And, if there's 3, 4 couples, however big the house is, and they're able to join us.
Sure.
So anyway, we just want to throw that out there because, a lot of you ask on social media and send us messages. And so we kind of wanted to clear a little bit of that up, but we want to get right into, we didn't get right into it because we started running our mouths.
Yeah.
Apologies.
Which is why this is 2 episodes instead of 1.
Yes. We're really good at that. We're really good at talking, in case you didn't know. So we have been, last week we started our episode was how we created a new marriage. And the premise of this is that, when you go through trauma, you don't want to go back. People often will say, oh, I just want to get back to the way we were. And the way we were was not working. And so we had to create a brand new marriage. And we're reading for our marriage reading this month is New Marriage, Same Couple. And so it's kind of got us thinking about that new marriage and how we need to continue creating a new marriage. And for those of you that are listening, it may not be trauma that you're dealing with, but everybody has certain areas that they just need to make new again. And so last week we talked specifically about teamwork, and we looked back on the ways that we failed our first 15 years of marriage, and then what we did to create a new marriage in the area of teamwork, and also communication is what we did last week. So today we're going to wrap this thing up, hopefully, and let's start. So we're going to start with how we created this new area of ministry, or how things are new in the area of our spiritual intimacy and our spiritual life. You did great taking the lead first last week, so I'm going to let you continue that.
Well, when I think about the spiritual area, and I even think I said at the end of last week's episode that's the one I'm most passionate about. That's the one that resonates most with me, and I see the biggest difference in my life. And, there's 2 things that I want to say, and I'm fixing to contradict you on both of them. The first one is, the title of this series is How We Made a New Marriage. And that is 100% how God made a new marriage through us. We were just willing. And you have to be willing. You have to be willing to accept the miracle. God works miracles, and God does that. And He 100% did that in our marriage. And more importantly, and even beyond that, was my spiritual life. The second thing that I'm going to contradict you about, and I fully understand the title and the purpose behind the title of the book that we're reading, Same Couple, New Marriage.
New Marriage, Same
New
Couple.
Marriage, Same Couple. But it's 100% for me. It was a new marriage because we became a new couple. And we became, and yes, it's still me and you. Again, I get the point of the title, and it's very catchy, and it's very attractive to a lot of people, including us. That's why we picked it. But we had to become new individuals to become a new couple. And in this area, in the spiritual area, is where I feel like the most change happened in our marriage. And because of that, the other areas were able to change. And so for me, this spiritual area I've done a lot of work, a lot of growth, a lot of learning, a lot of just being renewed in this area. And I think that, if you've listened to us at all, you know, in past episodes, you know that we both grew up in a very traditional church, and there's nothing wrong with a traditional church. But I don't think that I connected with God in a traditional way. And I grew up only being taught of those traditional ways, like, you know, for lack of better word, rituals or checklist. You know, I'm going to spend this much time in prayer. I'm going to, you know, start the morning like this. I'm going to read this. It very, very checklist-ish. Now, I shifted and was like, I didn't grow closer to the Lord like that. So nobody does. And that's not true either. There are lots of people out there that are very, they do feel closer to the Lord through those traditional practices. That just was not my way, and that's okay. So I went on this journey to figure out, how do I connect with the Lord? And, you know, if there's anybody out there that says that they don't connect with him through the word, I think that's a problem. I think that everybody needs to connect with him through the word. And I do connect with him a lot through Bible study and learning new things about him and learning things about myself through that. But also I very much connect with him just through his presence and group worship and things like that. So my connection with him, I mean, he absolutely showed me who I was without him. And if you haven't heard that part of our story, I would, you know, there's several episodes in there where I go back and talk about that. So I don't want to rehash that for people who follow us regularly. But it was a brokenness of my sin and me seeing myself who I was apart from Christ. And in that journey of seeing that, and you've heard me say this before, but my mentor put a hand on me when I was broken and said, God, please don't let her see her sin without catching a glimpse of her Savior. And in that moment, like, it is a moment for me, and it's not a moment for everybody, but it was a moment for me where I saw who I was and simultaneously fell in love with who Jesus was and what he had done for me. And then over the past 12 and a half years, it has been a daily journey for me to fall in love with Jesus more, learn more about him, learn more about myself in him, and let him refine and renew that. So in our spiritual life, I think we have a lot more freedom than we had before, in that you draw close to the Lord in certain ways. I draw close to the Lord in different ways. We communicate about that, talk about what God's teaching us in our separate ways, and then are able to, in discussion, become closer together because of that.
That's good. When I think back to how we were first 15 years of marriage, one of the things that I just remember so vividly is that you, in a way, would almost nag me. And we talk about nagging and how, you know, a lot of times one spouse will kind of nag the other to get on board spiritually. But you would almost nag me in a way of almost making me feel guilty because I wasn't leading you to have a personal relationship. Like, you were so dependent on, like, it was, hey, well, I'm not growing close to God because
It's your fault.
Yeah, because you're not praying with me.
Yeah.
And you're not doing a devotion with me, you know, the checklist type thing,
Sure.
because that's what we knew. And where I fell apart there is I didn't know how to lead really any other way except for kind of that traditional sense of leadership and doing, you know, making sure that we were checking the boxes as a couple. And the problem was, it didn't matter really how close I was to the Lord and what my spiritual relationship was. I was never going to be enough. And I thought about that because we talk about how in other areas of marriage, when you're depending on the other person and they're never going to be enough. Well, that's why a lot of times I think that, especially males, when it comes to leadership, we never feel like we're going to be enough. And so it's hard to lead. So it didn't really matter where I was spiritually. I was never going to be good enough, but I'm not supposed to be.
That's right.
And I'm not supposed to be responsible for your spiritual growth. And so when everything shifted for us was when we realized we're very different in how we connect with God. And just like you said, you found the ways and, in God's presence. And for me, it's a nature. So I'm one of those that I guess you would land on the naturalist thing, because it's getting in nature and praying. It's really having some conversation with God. And that's when we transformed. You said it. You said the word freedom. When we realized neither one of us was responsible for each other's spiritual life, we were responsible for growing in our own way spiritually, but then that growth, we started incorporating it into everything we did, whether it was decision-making, whether it was parenting, just talking about the ways that God was growing us, just everything. Our expression of worship when we're in corporate worship together, everything just became an overflow of what was happening to us individually. And so that was the biggest change for us. And so now, it's not checklist for us. It's we're just growing separately, and because of that, it's growing us closer together, because we know how important that is to our marriage. Okay. Next, right?
Yes.
Here we go again. We just keep running out of time.
Sorry.
No, I mean, it's fine. Like I said last week, do you know who's in charge of this podcast?
Yeah, we are. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, we can do what we want to do. All right, so physical intimacy. Wow. All right, well,
Yeah.
hey, I mean, you've been hitting the home runs starting.
Well,
so go.
physical intimacy for me, I'm probably going to let you talk more about this. But for me, it's not as much of a transformation as the spiritual side, so I don't have as much to say about it. But to me, our intimacy now is so much. I feel like it is literally an act of worship, and I know that sounds so weird, but it's not, because God created sex. God created intimacy. It is a way that we feel the closest to one another. It is the glue that holds us together. It is meant to be the closest that you are with anybody. Mm-hmm. And that's why sex before marriage is so dangerous, because you get glued to somebody physically, and it's hard to tear apart from them if that relationship is not God honoring, or if it's not one that you're going to end up marrying that person. Mm. And so for us, that I feel like it is, our physical relationship now is more intended is more the way that God intended. Shush. It is more the way God intended it to be than it was before. And I'm not saying we were doing anything cuckoo or weird or inviting things into our marriage bed that weren't supposed to be there. That's not the case. It's just that I realized what a gift our physical relationship was. And so therefore, I feel like I try to honor God in that. I feel like it is something that I have to be very unselfish with, that I feel like I was very selfish with before. I see it now as a way to serve you and to love you well. Now, we have podcasts on sex and our sexual relationship and all of that goes into much more detail. But just to summarize, Rusty has a much higher sex drive than I do. But that doesn't mean that we do it less, because I'm not as sexually eager. It's just that I have learned to love him well in that area. And I have to take my eyes off of me a lot and put it on you. And so because I was such a selfish person before 12 years ago, and that is an area where God has radically changed me, I feel like that's just so much easier for me to do because of where my heart is in that.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to take a little bit of a different turn with this because you sort of summed up a lot of the real practical side of things and kind of how we're different. And yes, we do view it much differently. And, you know, some of that is because of the trauma that we went through. But then, you know, just, I mean, even for me, the selfish and the now unselfish part of it, I mean, I think that's for both of us because, you know, particularly like what you said, but then on my side of things, it's not that it's just a physical act anymore. And, you know, learning that and embracing that as you grow together is a big deal. But where I kind of want to go with this is more of, y'all know our story. That's why you listen to this, or a lot of you are attracted to our story because you know that we did walk through infidelity, and so Heather was unfaithful, and it was a physical relationship that was outside of our marriage, and so I just want to acknowledge the pain and the absolute devastation that causes that comes to a marriage because of that. And so there's people out there that are listening to this, and you're in the same. That is your story, either yours or your spouse, and you're trying to figure out how you can ever get back. And like we said, it's not getting back, but how can you ever be physically intimate again? And there's others of you that haven't maybe experienced something that traumatic where your spouse has had an affair or you've had an affair, or infidelity. I mean, there are people we know that don't like that word affair, but it's culture, and so we what I want to make sure that people are seeing from our story is that the only way that you can come back from something that devastating is, first of all, it's a miracle, to be honest. But it's also because we decided it has to be new. And to know that there's true forgiveness, that there's true trust, that there's true safety. And when all of those ingredients come together, God can redeem your situation. And one of the things is, it may be that that's not your situation, but you're just really stuck in a place where we're not physically intimate because of X, Y, and Z. God can redeem that. God can completely change hearts. He can change desire. He can change so many things, but it may start with you just praying about it and like sincerely, genuinely praying for a desire for your spouse, for you to be unselfish, for your spouse to be unselfish, whatever it is that's the hang up. And I just want people to be able to look at us and go, man, if they were able to make it through what they went through and have this area of their marriage be brand new, then we can too.
Yeah.
And so you're right. It's just different. It is different, but it is also incredible. And we really do mean that. And so much of that, though, is you completely changing and shifting to where, yeah, you're just very selfless when it comes to that. And that doesn't mean that it's just, hey, well, whatever you want. We have a connection there. But it's just really, really different. So I think from here we move into this sort of quickly, but because you mentioned it being a holy thing, but it's also really fun. Mm-hmm. We have a good time. And So the fifth area that we want to talk about is how we created, with God's help, making this new marriage, and part of it is just having fun. And we're not just roommates. Like we are enjoying life together, and we just have we have a good time. That doesn't mean that everything is always roses and parades around here. It's not, but we have a great time. And I'll jump in here, and you can kind of wrap up. So think about what you're going to say on having a good time. I think for me, where it shifted was first 15 years. I just tried too hard. Like I tried too hard to be everything that you needed me to be. And I was never, ever going to be enough for you. And when I wasn't enough, it affected me. And it upset me, and I was down. And so we had a hard time. There were plenty of fun times, don't get me wrong. But we had a hard time just enjoying life together because there was just so much pressure. And there was so much, walking on eggshells. And I don't want to do anything to make her mad, or and then I would try and I wasn't good enough. And so then I was a loser. I felt terrible. All of that was just over and over and over. And after walking through infidelity, I went to my counselor one day, and I had this list of all of these things that I was like, I know I need to do this and this. I need to forgive her, and I need to do this to make, to start believing and trusting and blah, blah, blah. I kept going on and on. And I got to the end, and she said, you don't need to take life so seriously. And I don't know, that one statement really changed a lot for me. And it's not that I didn't get to a point where I was like, I just don't care anymore. It was just, you know what? This life is too short to not enjoy each other. And, we have this small window of time on earth, and we're together. We've committed ourselves to each other. We've walked through literal hell, it feels like. And now we're on the other side of that. And it's like, we just don't have time to not have fun together.
Yeah.
And I think that's what has changed, and why we created this new marriage, of just enjoying life together. And we genuinely do most of the time.
Yeah. And I think for me, it became being with you and having fun with you became an area that I was really made aware of even just 7 years ago when I went through breast cancer. Of course, I've always been thankful that you stayed. I can't, I tell you that a lot. Like, the thank you that you stayed. Like, you didn't leave. You stayed and you fought for our marriage. But then so that was a huge area of thankfulness. And then on top of that, 7 years ago, when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and the thought of not being here, I was like, gosh, I have so much to be thankful for. Like, not just thankful that you stayed, but thankful that I get to do life with you. Thankful that I get to live. And there's, so many people in this world, I hope, that are listening to this podcast that haven't been through either of those things, but it's still finding an area of thankfulness and being, having gratitude towards the fact that you get to do life with your spouse. And it's shifting that perspective of, take the things that drive you nuts, or the things that you're like, oh, well, we could have fun if she wouldn't do this, or if he wouldn't do that. And taking your gaze and shifting it towards thankfulness. And I think that I know that if you shift towards thankfulness and gratitude, you will start having more fun and enjoy life more with your spouse.
That's good. And I think a part of having fun together is learning to be intentional, to make time to enjoy each other and have fun together. And we've even been doing that more and more over the last couple of years. Really, it has been intentional, but I think God's just really preparing us for the empty nest, which we call second honeymoon season. And when we end up going places and doing things together more, and the kids are older and they're not with us all the time, and yeah, it feels like there's a hole there sometimes because we're so used to doing it with our kids, and we're really, really close as a family. But honestly, we just have learned that we're enjoying each other even when it's just us. So the little dates here and there, the times when the kids are out and, one's in college, the other one's about to go to college, but, if he's out late and we're just home by ourselves and we're watching TV, it's just taking those moments to just enjoy being together. And we're being very intentional about that, I think. So yeah, I hope that those 5 areas kind of give you a glimpse into what really changed in our marriage. And, if there's one of those 5 that you're like, man, we just don't do a good job in that area, then this is your chance. This is your chance to not go back to the way it was, but make something completely new. And I promise, if you live the next however many years that you're living on this earth and married together in that new marriage, you're just gonna love life. And that's the way we should be living together. So we enjoyed sharing a little bit of our journey with you, and we're gonna sign off, and we'll see you next time.